Look at these two guys. It's the HawksNest roundtable with Curtis Crabtree and Tim Booth. It's all brought to you by Georgetown Brewery. It's locally owned and operated by two diehard Huskies. Of course, Manny and Roger. They've been pouring the best local craft beer for the past 23 years. Makers of Manny's Pale Ale, Bodie's Off IPA, and, of course, other of your favorite beers. Tap room is open 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. Visit them online at georgetownbeer.com. We'll be doing this every Monday with these guys, spending about 20 to 30 minutes with them every Monday, recapping the Seahawks game from the past week. Well, Tim, let me start first with you. Associated Press. Tim's been covering. God, how long have you been covering Seattle sports and the Seahawks now?
I've been doing it 14 years by myself, and I've been doing it in total for almost 20. So it's been a while.
Okay, let's just get a quick update, or not an update, but a thought, opening statement, or so to speak, on the debut of Mike McDonald. How do you think it went?
You couldn't really ask for it to be much better, especially considering the way the day started, the way the game started for them to, overcome some obvious adversity in the first half, especially offensively. I was really impressed with the defense, and you should be impressed with the defense when you're facing a rookie quarterback and a team that doesn't quite have the offensive weapons of some teams that you're going to see later in the year. But I thought there was an attitude to the way they played defensively. There was an aggressiveness. There was a sort of fierceness to it. They hit hard. They ran to the ball. They were sort of uber aggressive, which is kind of what you thought you were going to get, and that's what you ended up getting. I thought it was a fairly basic defensive game plan. Don't let Bo Nix do anything that's gonna cause you to lose the game, and they kind of held them in check. So for an opener, for a first time coach, and for a first time this team playing together in this way, I don't think you can ask for much more than to come out with not what I'd say is an impressive victory, but just a nice, solid victory to open the season.
What, Curtis, your takeaway from the debut of McDonald, I would assume it was kind of similar to how Tim viewed it.
Yeah, I think I was more impressed with the defense than I thought I was going to be, and obviously the offense was a little less impressive than I thought it could be, given the struggles that they had on the offensive line. But yeah, I was impressed with the defense's ability. It really felt connected to me, like the timing of their pressure packages to what they were doing in coverage seemed to sync up really well across the board, to where when Nix is trying to get the ball out to a receiver, there's a guy right there to make the play behind it. Offensively was not pretty to start. Obviously, there was one offensive lineman that seemed like he was holding up in the first half, and that was Charles Cross. And you kind of expect some, hiccups with Connor Williams, and the two guards had their issues, and obviously you had to make a change at right tackle with George Fant being hurt, so there was a rotating turnstile there already to figure out what you were doing with the lineup. But they were able to switch up their scheme, change the kind of run plays they started to run in the second half, and were able to find enough footing to make things less of a problem and get enough going to be able to come out of it with the win that they needed. So it was impressive in that you saw the defense perform the way it did, and the fact that they did, on the fly, have to make some pretty significant adjustments, and they worked and came out and got them the win that they were looking for.
Tim, you go back to that first half. I mean, I've been watching a lot of football. A lot of Seahawks football, and my God, and I love those uniforms, but I've seen a lot of that football in those uniforms when I was a kid growing up, and that was the worst half of offensive football I've ever seen, and that dates back to 92 with Stan Gelbaugh. I mean, it was so bad, but credit to them and how they were able to turn it around. I don't know. I think we overblow the second half adjustment thing so much. They don't have enough time to make all these crazy adjustments that everyone thinks that they make. But they came out and just executed clearly better offensively. From your perspective and talking to people there, what was it that Ryan Grubb was able to do in that second half to change things around?
I think they simplified. It felt like that first half they came out and they were trying to show off all these new things that they were going to do. It just kind of felt like they were trying to force what was happening rather than just playing to what the opportunity or what the defense was giving and what the opportunities were. It felt like Ryan Grubb wanted to show off his new toy and kind of like show the different ways that they can use the receivers, the way the motion was going to work, the way the offense in general was going to work. And they couldn't do it because the offensive line was crap in the first half, is what it was. Second half, just simplify things. Go out of shotgun, hand the ball off to Ken Walker, get some sort of run game established, and then build some pass plays off of that. That's what it felt like what happened. Just like throw out the fancy stuff, get back to the basics, get back to simplifying things, take advantage of a mediocre Denver defense, and just win the damn game rather than be flashy and exciting and win it in that way. That's what it felt like to me changed in the second half. And yeah, they had to do that to a certain extent because your offensive line was in some ways decimated because you lost your right tackle and neither of your guards could block a damn thing in the first half. But that's what it felt like to me, and sort of the indication after. You're right. They don't have time within the context of what halftime is to make massive adjustments. You have 12 minutes, and about 6 of that is the length of time that you get to really talk to guys. So what are you going to do in that situation? You're just going to simplify things. You're going to make it as easy and straightforward as possible to win the game, and that's what it felt like they did in the second half offensively.
Yeah, and Kenneth Walker. I mean, to that point, Curtis, Kenneth Walker. I mean, I don't know if it was just a challenge maybe by somebody at halftime to get it going more. But he turned into a freak. I mean, there is so much talent with him and how he runs and the violence that he runs with. Appropriate that Marshawn was there on the sidelines giving a back massage to Mike McDonald during the game. But I mean, Walker just ran with a vengeance, I thought, in that second half.
Yeah, he did. And the one thing I do think that they changed is I think they went to more gap scheme style of runs and changed the type of runs that they tried to go to. But that's where you started to see things start to pop a little bit more. And, I mean, even I remember at one point during the game yesterday on Walker's touchdown, I think I tweeted something like that, or it was one of the good runs he had. It might not even been the touchdown. I was like, that was a really nicely blocked run play. And then I went back and looked at it. No, Stone Forsythe absolutely whipped on a guy at the second level, but Walker made a miss, and then all of a sudden he's breaking out the side. So Walker was able to make up for some of the issues that they still had by making that one extra guy miss and find his footing. But yeah, he had a pretty big performance, and to get them some offensive consistency. When we talked to Tyler Lockett after the game, he was, and Laken Tomlinson followed this up too when I talked to him, was basically they just needed something to go right there to kind of get them going a little bit. And then once they did, Tyler said it was the couple back-to-back catches from Jackson Smith and Jigba. I felt it took a little longer before they found it, but then you started to see things clean up a little bit more as the game progressed.
Again, Tim, and again, Tim Booth, the Associated Press, with us here. Again, this HawksNest roundtable brought to you by Georgetown Brewery. If you just take your phone, this is how fancy we are now. And you click on that QR code. It's going to take you right there to Georgetown Brewery. And you can go and salivate all over the fine beers that Manny and Roger have created there. If you're watching it there on YouTube, if you're just listening, back later on the podcast on Apple and Spotify, you can't do that because you can't take a picture of audio. They haven't made that technology yet. The offensive line issues, Tim. I mean, is it? I mean, we always do overreaction Monday. Is it too early to overreact to this play, this offensive line? It's one of these storylines we keep talking about. It's like the Mariners and their lack of offense. We keep talking about the same storyline with this offensive line. It continues to be a problem, and for a half yesterday, it looked to be that way as well.
No, I don't think it's an overreaction because right now, Stone Forsythe is your right tackle. Like, how do you feel about that? I think that Connor Williams is going to get more settled, and he's going to figure things out as he sort of gets a little bit more in the system, make sure that the knee is holding up the way that everyone's intending to. He's still only 9 months from ACL surgery, which is remarkable in this day that you can recover from an injury like that and be playing football that quickly. But make sure that he's fitting, feeling comfortable in what he's doing. So take Connor Williams aside, take Charles Cross aside, because he was pretty solid yesterday, and I think you feel pretty comfortable about your left tackle situation. Right tackle and the two guards right now, I don't know how you feel about it. I would be personally, if I'm a fan, pretty uncomfortable because Laken Tomlinson looked like a 10-year vet yesterday. He looked like he's been a very solid professional, but there is some tread on that. There's some wear on those tires. Like it's been 10 years of playing that position, which is quite the grind. And for parts of yesterday, he looked like someone who had been through 10 years of playing that, and maybe it was starting to show a little bit. Anthony, right guard was the one competition really in training camp among it, and Anthony Bradford, he gets a holding penalty in the end zone for the safety. There were other times in the first half he looked a little overmatched. He had to leave for a bit because it looked like he got rolled up on. And then obviously George Fant, that to me that looked like the kind of injury where an ACL or an MCL just goes, because it wasn't like he got hit from the side or anything like that. It looked like he planted and his knee just kind of gave out, which is a big, that's not the best sign in the world to see that kind of reaction to a play like that. So, you have to be concerned about it. And we kind of felt going into the season that the one thing that had the potential to hold back the possibilities of what this offense could be would be if the offensive line was crap again. And I'm not saying it's crap at this point, but there are some concerning signs coming out of the opener.
Yeah. Curtis, what options would they have? Again, I don't think they're going to make wholesale changes after week 1, but if they ever were to try and do something, are there even options there, or is this is kind of what they're stuck with right now?
I think this is kind of who they are, right? Like, I do think Connor Williams will steady things out as he gets more time going with their system, a little bit further away from the injury and all of that. The issue with Anthony Bradford there, he got dinged early too, and then you have the 2 holding penalties, one going for the safety that hurt them, obviously. They need some more time together. Charles Cross is the one guy I don't think you have to worry about. I thought he was really, really good yesterday. But now, if you count Abe Lucas right now, which obviously there's a reason not to, they're going to be starting their 3rd string right tackle probably this weekend if George can't go, and Stone Forsythe. And now you've seen Stone play enough to know that he can be semi-functional, but it's not, he has his warts and he has issues in his game and all that too. So they'll have to try to figure it out. They do have the ability to go to Christian Haynes if Bradford struggles and make that switch. I don't know that they're going to necessarily do that at any of the other spots right away. I think that would take longer for them to have to pull a ripcord and make a decision to make a switch on those fronts.
Yeah. How did you guys, Curtis, stick with you here? What was the evaluation of Geno? Certainly, did not play well in the first half. We've talked a lot about, I think, in this offseason, just about Geno and the future of him at quarterback. The short term and the long term. Second half, again, was able to play much better because of things they did. That interception the first half, I know there was a little bit of pressure, but boy, I still don't know where he was trying to throw it to.
Well, I think he got hit, and that's what did it. I think the hit redirected it to Singleton.
Okay. How did you think he played overall?
I thought he did about as good as he could do with the circumstances that they had. That first half, it was a non-functional offensive line in the first half. And what quarterback you put back there do much better than that? I don't know. Maybe you get a couple more plays here and there, but that was not pretty for a quarterback to have to try to work behind. And ultimately, he comes back in the second half and makes some really big throws. The throw he made to Tyler Lockett on the last play of the game to steal it, it couldn't have been like an inch in a different direction. He gets to it, the defender gets to it from behind, or it goes probably past the front of Tyler Lockett. You don't get that catch, don't make that play. I thought, it's certainly not going to be a pretty game in the box score by any stretch, but I think he did what he needed to do, made some really big throws when he needed to. The back shoulder throw to Lockett up the sideline. There was a crosser to Metcalf that was a very good throw by Surtain as well. Given the state of the offensive line in the first half, I thought he did about all you could have hoped to do on that. And like I said, I think whoever was it DJ Jones that beat Connor Williams and hit him on the interception play? I think that's what led to the ball going directly because he was trying to hit Lockett, I think, behind that on a dig behind it and couldn't get it there. So I think that's what happened on that play. So certainly not a game that's going to wow you on the statistical standpoint, but I thought he played pretty well given the circumstances.
Yeah, Tim, is it encouraging that the way, I know McDonald and not knowing him at all, I think just watching the videos and reading stuff about him, and you guys certainly have much more closer relationship to him than I do, that he has a very dry kind of sense of humor a little bit. I like the way he opened up his press conference about how that's how we drew it up. That's how we wanted to start. I guess I was encouraged that they got up to such a horrendous start. And I know a lot of people have already talked about this and written about this. And I think you guys have touched on it. There was no panic. They didn't panic at all. And they didn't come out and do something dramatically different in the second half. And his demeanor was calm on the sideline. For a first-year guy and making his very first start and the nerves that must have been inside him, I just thought that was a great kind of inside look into what his temperament will be as a head coach, how he conducted himself, not on the sideline and I think on the post game and reacting to the game.
Everything is it's just calm. It's like, with everyone loved Pete, and Pete was emotional, and he would have these huge swings, and you'd see the cheering and the outbursts on the sidelines, and he'd be getting the ear of a ref and screaming at him, and just like that's what we became used to. And that's not how McDonald operates. He's so cerebral and he's so process kind of driven that that it seems like he's always just kind of thinking, okay, it's in some ways it's a little robotic, but you're right. He does have a sense of humor. He does have sort of this, sarcastic side to him, as evidenced by the way he started yesterday. But he's so mindful and so thinking about what's coming next, the next play, the next call, the next series, whatever it might be, that he just, I think it's kind of something that the experience around the Harbaughs kind of probably, he saw firsthand, is just kind of this even keelness, this keep the process moving, keep things moving forward. Let's remain calm. Let's work through our situation. Let's work through, what the next obstacle is going to be. That's kind of the way it comes across to me. And he does have a very dry sense of humor. Like he doesn't let it come out very often, but during training camp, we've seen it at various times. I thought yesterday was great to come into your first press conference after your first victory and be, sarcastic in that way. I thought it was perfect. It shows he's got a little bit of a personality behind this sort of defensive machine brain that he has, that's led to him having this much success at such a young age in his coaching career.
Curtis, what did we learn from that first-time offensive coordinator and Ryan Grubb in the second half?
Well, that they can make the adjustments to kind of find something when stuff's not going well in the first half. I mean, two different series where you're backed up on your own 1 yard line. Not super comfortable situations to be in, for sure. Having to switch out the right tackle you'd plan to start less than, about 10 plays into the game. There was a lot of stuff that went wrong in that first half that they needed to try to figure out a way to make work, and they did. And, I mean, you don't typically see it, think about some of the coaches that have been here or otherwhere, they are like, we have the stuff that we do, we're going to do our stuff well. And they were like, well, our stuff that we plan to do in this game is not working, so let's change it and switch it up and go to a scheme we weren't planning to use as much in the gap scheme stuff in the second half and find a way to make this thing come together. And I think you got to give them a lot of credit on that front. And to circle back for a McDonald thing really quick, one of the things that Julian Love told us last week during a presser was somebody asked him for a moment about what had happened in team meetings or whatever, and somebody said something about make sure you hit that guy in the ass or whatever. He's like, and McDonald said, well, it's okay to hit the rest of them too. It was like just kind of a funny, kind of dry, sarcastic line about being able to hit the whole dude. And he said it made him laugh pretty good. So he's got a little bit of a sense of humor to him. It doesn't show outwardly as much, but you get that sense in talking to him a little bit one-on-one that it's there as well.
Yeah, I just think that we talked a little about the tackling. I mean, it's one of the best tackling performances I've ever seen, from a Seahawks team. I mean, it was just, I don't know, maybe you've mentioned it earlier and then I didn't hear one of you say it. Tim, maybe you have it. I mean, how many missed tackles did they have?
I think PFF had them for 5, something like that. I think it was a very low number. And I think the thing that impressed me with the way they tackled was they hit they hit them. Like it wasn't like these perfect form tackles. It was guys running through dudes' faces and hitting them and knocking them down that way. Rayshawn Jenkins, my God, there was a couple times yesterday where it was just where we audibly just kind of gasped in the press box, seeing how hard he was hitting a couple of guys. Like they were when I said earlier they were aggressive, like that's where it showed. It wasn't this reactive sort of tackling where you're kind of absorbing the hit and pulling the guy down. And I love Bobby Wagner more as much as any player I've ever covered in my career. But toward the end of Bobby's time here, that was the sort of the way that he tackled. Guys were sort of coming up to him and he was taking them down that way. The way that they were hitting yesterday, they were running through guys. They were the aggressors. They were going after them and hitting them down to the ground. I was incredibly impressed with the way that they tackled and just the aggression with which they tackled yesterday.
Yeah. And that's really quick. That's where the timing that I was talking about with the defense comes back later, because it's a lot easier to hit and tackle like that when you're right there when a guy makes the catch, as opposed to him having the ability to be in space on you and make the moves. Now, that being said, there's plenty of times they made tackles in space too, but that timing of their coverage and the stuff that they were doing, I felt brought everything together.
And it's also another factor of it is how little tackling do you do in training camp or in the preseason? And you do basically none. Like, you're doing very, very limited amounts of that in the 6 weeks leading into when you play your first game. So that was another part of the way yesterday worked out, is I thought they were really good at, being aggressive and fundamentally getting guys down at a time when traditionally week one, you have seen a lot of poor tackling just because teams don't do it much anymore.
That's a great point, right? Because they don't ever really tackle at all. They played defensively at times yesterday. How I think Pete Carroll has talked about wanting to play defense for the last 5 years.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It felt, now they're not the 2013, 2012, 2014 defense. No, but there were moments yesterday where you kind of felt it. You kind of felt like a little bit of that was back. And that's, you're right. That was sort of the fleeting thing that Pete was searching for the last 5 years defensively, was, can we rekindle some of what we had now 10 years ago, and bring that back. And again, this isn't the same group. They're not going to be the same, but the game isn't the same. But there was little pieces of that you felt again yesterday. Now it's one snapshot, of course, across a 4-month season and 18 weeks. But if you can replicate that more and more, this defense has a chance to be pretty damn good.
Yeah. And, and then it comes to, because I know there's going to be a lot of talk, Curtis, right, about just how do they get the passing game going, right? DK Metcalf was pretty much, non-existent in the game. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I want to say, was it 2 targets and 2 catches? Like, he didn't really have much of a factor at all. Now, but a lot of that's just going to come to the offensive line. If they can't protect, right, there's going to be really no time to really efficiently throw the football. But something to kind of keep an eye on is how much will that offensive line, they were able to get away with it against Denver, but how much will that offensive line and their issues really affect what Ryan Grubb ultimately, right, Curtis, wants to do offensively in that passing game?
Yeah, and I mean, think about it. You have 2 drives that lasted 1 play because they went for safeties.
Yeah.
You had the interception on the second play of a drive. So that is one thing that was somewhat like Pete Carroll offenses the last couple of years, where they just didn't run enough plays yesterday. They ran 60 plays in total. And some of it was circumstantial because of the safeties and ending up with an interception that you get at your your own 1 yard line, and a muffed punt from D. Williams to put you back there as well. So you don't get enough plays to kind of get to that point. But then the other part of it, as you mentioned, and we talked about, is the offensive line struggled to protect to such a degree, particularly early, that they didn't have much of a chance. I mean, after halftime, they had, the play drives are 6-10, 6-6, 3-6. They were able to possess the ball a little bit more and do a little bit more collectively overall at that point. But yeah, there was a reason the offense looked as bad as it did in the first half. It was because they put themselves in bad situations, and then the offensive line couldn't do anything either.
Yeah, Tim, are we going to get? You figure we'll get an update probably later today. When Mike McDonald speaks to the media here on Monday about the status of George Fant, and the indication will probably be not good. What it's going to be?
Yeah, and that's one thing. This is good for fans to know this year too. The team's off day now is Monday. It used to be that they would come in for meetings on Mondays, and then they would have Tuesday as their off day. McDonald has flipped that. And so the players aren't required to be in the building until Tuesdays this year, when they're going to go through their film breakdowns and go through that. So there might be limited injury information that comes out on Mondays this year. The goal by him still doing his press conference on Monday afternoons is he'll have gone back through the film and talk about the game and stuff like that. But there might not be sort of substantial injury news that comes out this year on Mondays. That being said, it didn't, to me, it didn't look great the way that it happened, and then the way that he sort of was reacting on the sideline and the way he walked off. So I would anticipate that is not a short-term kind of thing, and that, their right tackle situation is quite perilous or tenuous moving forward with Stone Forsythe as your starter for now.
Curtis, I like that move there by Mike McDonald. I really do. I mean, I wonder how many other teams do that. I'd rather have the Monday off after being, in a 3.5 hour car wreck if I'm a player.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like, you can come in and get your treatment on the Mondays anyway, and I'm sure guys will still do that to some extent. And I mean, guys that need MRIs will go for that in the morning still. It's not like they're going to be completely, hands off on a Monday, but it's just a slightly different way of doing it. Yeah. In some ways, would you like to have Tuesday when you have 24 hours to feel a little bit better, to actually have a day to yourself too? Like, you can make the argument in any which way you want about it, but it is a little bit different. Another one of those little tweaks that he's made to his system for sure. And with the Fant injury, like, it does make things interesting. Like, let's assume he's out this week, just for the sake of argument, for the thought exercise. Stone would be the next logical person up, but Mike Jarrell's on the roster too, and McClendon Curtis is on the practice squad, who they had at right tackle most of training camp as well. Those would be the three options they could choose from, depending on which direction they want to go. They could call McClendon up for from the practice squad to start for him if they wanted to make the switch there and don't feel Jarrell's ready. Any number of things they could do to kind of make that situation work with him out. But that's the options they would be juggling between.
How are they do we know, there's the adjustment here. I'm always curious about how coaches do things and how differently they change things up from the previous regime. We mentioned, Tim, you just mentioned how the Monday's now the new off day for them. What about travel-wise? They're going back East Coast right away. They're going to be playing New England next Sunday at 10 a.m. Have they changed their travel schedule at all? Mike McDonald changing anything up on that one?
No, the plan is that they're still going to go anytime they go 2 time zones or further. Well, I guess you only go 2 time zones. Anyway, the plan is that I'm thinking about to the Europe.
That's like something I would say.
I know, god damn it. The plan is they'll go Fridays. The same, go 2 days out, ahead of any game that's in the Central or Eastern time zone, which they have. They've got 4 trips to the Eastern time zone this season. They also go to Chicago, but that's a weird one because it's on Christmas or the day after Christmas. So I think that's it. I think it's 5 to that time zone. There might be one more that I'm not thinking of, but yeah. So they're gonna go out 2 days early. So they'll leave Fridays for the game on this upcoming Sunday.
Okay. Looking ahead, what do you think the next step is, Curtis? The thing that he is going to press this week, Mike McDonald, press this week. We need to get better next week against New England.
Because he's a defensive coach, he'll be like, we need to tackle that a little bit more and clean things up a little bit more on the defensive side. You heard it in his press conference last night. He kind of alluded to the fact that there's things that he saw on that side of the ball that he wanted to get a little bit better at. But certainly it's got to be the offensive line. Offensive line has to play better because the skill position, you still saw that part yesterday. The skill position pieces made the plays across the board when you can get the ball to them in advantageous situation. Offensive line has to find a way to be better than that. Over the long haul. And I think some of that will grow naturally. Like I said, give Connor Williams a little bit more time to get up to speed. He hadn't done anything like that, since getting hurt last December, and get up to speed with the rest of the guys there. Laken Tomlinson sung the praises of Connor Williams when I talked to him after the game, and he loves playing next to him already. But as a unit, they need to get a little bit more cohesive and find things, to settle it down a little bit more and be more consistent, which is something we've said for a few years now. But out of game 1, that's also something that they need to find to get a little bit better with.
How about that? Hey, Tim, how about that catch from Lockett? The throw. I didn't realize just how I saw Dugar posted a video of just the end zone copy and just seeing the difficulty of the throw too. But the catch, a guy in his 10th year who maybe wasn't going to play this week, but that he did. Just what a great execution from both.
It was, in the moment, I thought it was a great catch by Tyler, and that's not to take away from how good the catch actually was, but when you saw the end zone view, that's a phenomenal throw. That is such a difficult throw to be as pinpoint as Gino was, with Tyler moving with the defender right on his hip, and to put it in a window that was about 2 inches by 2 inches, and to drop that in there. That's it's a great catch. It's a great play by Tyler, but it is truly a spectacular throw by Gino to fit that in there and get it there.
Gentlemen, I appreciate the HawksNest Roundtable with Curtis Crabtree and Tim Booth, brought to you by Georgetown Brewery, locally owned and operated by two diehard Husky fans, Manny and Roger. They've been pouring the best local craft beer for the past 23 years. Manny's Pale Ale, Bodie's Zaffa, Lucille, all your favorite beers there at Georgetown Brewery. Tap room is open 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. Visit them at georgetownbeer.com. If you click on that or take a picture of that QR code, it will take you right there. Gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate it. We will talk next Monday.
Thank you, Jason.
There he is. There's Tim. There is Curtis. We appreciate them for both jumping on here today here on the Daily Puck Drop. They're on the HawksNest, which again is brought to you there by Georgetown Brewery.